Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Last week I showed my true Dutch heritage by attempting to flatten the mountains of the Alpine Adventures scenario as quickly as possible. My final time was 2 years and 2 months, which is a little over 2 hours of gameplay time. That's not bad, but I have since upgraded my Dutchness, and with the newest mountain removal techniques I can now do it so fast that I will be done before you have finished watching this video. My final strategy last week was really quite simple. Just build a ton of micro corkscrew coasters for which you charge €7.40 each, and then just wait until you have enough money to lower all the land. To get as many guests as possible, I ran all the ad campaigns at all times and also had a ton of cash machines so that broke guests could stock up again. And lastly, I refurbished all the rides every 5 months so that I could keep charging that €7.4 instead of needing to lower the price. However, I made 2 big mistakes here. The first is that I completely forgot that Alpine Adventures has the harder guest generation option turned on. If you had asked me whether this scenario had it, I would have known that it did, but I just didn't think about it at all until a viewer by the name Atma Palazzo reminded me of it in the comments. This is the proper explanation for why I got so few guests. I was confused by the fact that even in my best run I only had 1800 guests after a year, as I knew it should have been more with both the natural guest generation and that from ads constantly maxed out. I really don't know why I didn't look into this further, as there clearly was something wrong. And that something was the harder guest generation, as this caused the natural guest generation to stop after the first 1000 guests. We still got quite a few from advertising, but none from the rides themselves anymore. You see, instead of every ride attracting guests as they do normally, this now only works up to 1000 guests. After that, only rides that are at least 600 meters long and have at least 6 excitement attract guests and increase the soft guest cap. And it's pretty clear that none of these 108 micro corkscrew coasters fulfill those requirements. So the solution to this is that we need to add some big coasters to the park to attract more guests. My second mistake was not thinking out of the box with my definition of the word flat. I lowered all the land down to 0 meters, which makes intuitive sense as that's the level of the park entrance and the flat area next to it. But as viewer Empire of Love 2 pointed out, who says it has to be at that level? Considering that even some of the valleys in the back of the park don't go below 10 meters, it might be cheaper to pick a higher level to change all the land to. So I did some experimenting. Lowering everything down to 0 units cost a whopping €1.76 million, but changing our target to be at 1 unit or 1.5 meters already decreases this to just 1.59 million. At 2 units high, it's 1.44 million, and it just keeps decreasing. At 7 units, the total cost goes under a million, and it reaches the lowest of 883,000 at 9 units or 13.5 meters high. That's an insane cost reduction, as it's just half of the original cost. It won't cut the completion time quite in half, as you make money faster the further you're into the run, but it will shave off a significant amount of time. So let's get started and apply these new strategies. The start of the run is identical to the previous. First we built some rotor drops to get us started, and after 1 month we unlocked the corkscrew coaster and built micro coasters instead, as they have a way lower nausea rating. Speaking of nausea, do you remember that in my first run I eventually decided to build benches to help guests lower their nausea ratings? Well, when recording last week's video I found a guest that was heading for a first aid room but was constantly distracted by benches trying to get there. This is a problem, as benches are way slower at lowering the nausea, even if the first aid room is a bunch of tiles away. And not only that, but guests stop using benches for nausea reduction when they're still somewhat nauseous, while a visit to the first aid room lowers it all the way down to 0. For this reason I will no longer be including benches and instead just provide plenty of first aid rooms. Because we're going to raise the land, it would be a waste of money to create a big flat area for our rides before needing to pay even more to raise it again at the end. So what I'm going to try to do is build some of the park underground. Recently, OpenRCT2 added the ability to use shift functionality on saved ride designs, allowing you to build them in the air or underground, but I had quite a bit of trouble getting it to go underground. So much trouble in fact that I even ended up building some of the rides manually instead. instead, which isn't that much work as the rides are quite small, but it's still a bit slower. One advantage of building underground is that everything will automatically be rainproof. We have these little roofs on the rides to make sure that the guests will still go on them in the rain, but that's not necessary when you build underground. You can also notice a small difference with the corkscrew coasters, as this time they have photo sections. I didn't include them previously, as guests can only buy one of these photos from these anyway, and it would make the ride take up more space. However, this time around I realized that it actually does not need to take up more space if you do it correctly. Usually these micro corkscrew coasters take up 4x3 tiles, but you can build them closer together and make everyone except the first one take only 3x3 tiles. The only reason for them being 4 tiles apart instead of just 3 is the queue line. So if we don't make the queue line bigger but do add a photo section, then we can still build them just 4 tiles apart. 3 corkscrews in a row now takes up 13 tiles, which is just one more than without photo sections. But in the previous attempt I had to leave an extra tile for shops and stalls anyway, so in reality they're the exact same size setup. The price I charge for my photos is a ridiculous €5.70. Only very happy guests can buy this, and even then there's still just a 25% chance that they actually will. This is fine though, as most guests are happy enough and they'll go on many rides, so the chance that they'll buy a photo before the run is finished is still quite large. 3 months in we have around 900 guests, so it's time to start building some of those big roller coasters to make sure that our soft guest cap actually goes above 1,000 this time. The newly unlocked vertical drop coaster allows us to build a design that both fulfills the requirements of 6 excitement and 600 meters of length, while also still being very profitable and decently compact. You can't build these underground, so unfortunately we will have to flatten more land in order to build these. They're not cheap, these vertical drop coasters, but that's not too big of a problem, as we can just sell them at the end and get most of the money back. From here on it's a simple matter of expanding the park and building enough big coasters to keep the soft guest cap above the guest count. A vertical drop coaster attracts 95 guests, and harder guest generation doubles that for big rides, so these attract 190 guests each. During the run I thought this was 200, which is wrong, but it's close enough that it doesn't really impact it. At the start of September we have 8 of these big vertical drop coasters, bringing our soft guest cap to 2,520, still well above the roughly 1,900 guests we currently have. Now we can continue building more micro corkscrew coasters, as they do make more money. The big coasters are also profitable, but they are more of a necessary evil for maximizing our guest count rather than the best option for profit. At the end of year 1 we have 2,400 guests, which is significantly more than the 1,800 of the previous run. This shows that our strategy of building a few big coasters is working. Or is it? Remember, while getting more guests is nice, that is all in the service of making more money so that we can flatten the park quicker. We don't actually care about the guest count specifically. And that is where it goes wrong, as while we do have 35% more guests, we are making less money. In October we made a little over €100,000 of profits from ride tickets, and in September and August in the 70,000s. Compare this to the previous run, where we did 105,000 in October and in the 80,000s the 2 months prior. In total we made about €60,000 less in our new attempt, despite having a lot more guests. Why? Well, it's because of those damned vertical drop coasters. They ruin everything. The problem is that they are very popular, as they have a higher excitement rating than the corkscrew coasters. And while we can charge more for them at €13.40 compared to €7.40, and their maximum throughput is about double that of the micro corkscrew, they are also very spread out and take a long time to ride. By the time a guest has walked all the way to the vertical drop coaster entrance and spent nearly a minute riding it, it could have already ridden 3 or maybe even 4 corkscrews and made me more money. Let's do a little experiment. This is the final park from my previous video, and if I let it run with full ads, then the ride ticket profit slowly goes up, and in October year 3 it's €195,000. Now let's see what happens if we add 4 vertical drop coasters to the sides of this park. Because they're just tacked on to the already existing path, this experiment already has removed the problem that the vertical drops are big and require a lot of space, so it's about as good as a case for them as possible. Despite that, our profit is consistently lower by about on average €8,000 every month, because the guests are now obsessed with these more exciting rides and are spending less money. Okay, what if we just built this ride on the opposite side of the map, not connected to the rest of the park? That's even worse, as now more than 25% of the guests are walking in circles trying to get to this fancy new ride without ever being able to get there, and our monthly profit is about 50,000 euros lower than without it. The conclusion seems to be that there is no way to properly include these bigger, more exciting rides without lowering the monthly profit, even if they do provide more guests. So while I did make a mistake by forgetting this park has harder guest generation, it looks like that was actually in my benefit and I should not have built these big coasters. In the end, despite these big coasters, I do easily beat my previous record for flattening the park, as the strategy of making it all 13.5 meters high instead of 0 meters is incredibly strong. In my previous record I finished at the start of May year 3, while here it's done at the end of August year 2, a little over 4 months quicker. While that's great, it's obvious that we need to do another run, this time with just corkscrew coasters again. The start of the run is again the same, except that I begin raising the land and building underground a lot quicker. I can do this now because I finally figured out how to build these saved ride designs underground. Usually when you're raising or lowering a scenery piece with the shift key, you just drag your mouse up and down and the scenery piece will follow it. But for this new ride raising feature in OpenRCT 2, it currently works a bit differently. Raising works the same, but I found that I can only get them to go underground if I put my mouse on a bit of ground that is at the level I need it to be. This bug, which might be fixed if you're watching this video in the future, makes it impossible to build a ride underground at a height that isn't somewhere else in your park. Luckily, this isn't a problem for us, as we do have a bit of land at 0 meters that we can use for this. Speaking of that bit of open ground, this 15 by 15 area is the only place we need handyman, as puke and litter cannot exist on the underground path. Guests can still puke or throw away litter and all the effects of that happen, it just doesn't appear on the ground. This saves us a lot of money on handymen, as we now only need a few of them to keep the above ground bit clean and nothing more. You may notice that I'm putting these little spots of sand on the snow. These are to help me determine where I need to position my roller coasters. I can't see the path or ride or anything that's underground, so I can't know exactly where I need to place them. To prevent me from having to guess every time, I put these sand tiles where the start of the queue lines need to be before lowering it underground. One little quirk of building the micro corkscrew coasters this close together is that it only works in one direction. It works if you build a new ride behind the already existing one, but not if you try to build it in front. So when building a new batch of corkscrews, I have to be careful to always start with the ones furthest away from the park entrance. I did mess this up twice, and while deleting the path, I did cause a few guests to embrace the void and enter eternal damnation. The final difference in the setup is that instead of adding a third row of corkscrews, as I did in the previous corkscrew run, I'm just going to place a whole bunch of them around the park. This results in nearly the same amount of rides, 95 versus 108, but it saves on a whole bunch of paths, meaning guests on average have to walk less far to their next ride, allowing them to spend more money quicker. At the end of year 1, we are making significantly more money than we did in the run with the vertical drop coasters. The ride ticket profit is still a tiny bit behind the previous corkscrew run, which I guess was just a really good run, but with the additions of the on-ride photos, which are counted under shop sales, we do make more money in total. From this point on, it's just refurbishing the ride when they turn 5 months old and lowering the land when we have some money. At the end of June year 2, there's just a little bit of land left in the back to still be lowered, and of course there's also the area near the entrance that needs to be raised up. I think I can do this before July starts, but I'll have to be quick. First, I deleted all the stalls in order to get some money and to not need to do that anymore later. Then, at hopefully the right time, I deleted a few rides to get me the cash to finish this corner, before deleting everything else and raising the final bit up to 13.5 meters. It's incredibly tight, but we're finished 2 seconds before the end of June, with just 5,000 euros left in the bank. This final time of 1.5 years is 2 months quicker than the previous run and 6 months faster than the best run in last week's video. Of course, my playing and luck could have been more optimal, but I think this is a pretty good result. However, at the start of this video I said that my current record for flattening Alpine Adventures is less time than this video is long, and since this run took about 1 hour and 21 minutes of real time, that clearly hasn't happened yet. So, what's my secret? What other strategy do I have that completely crushes this time? Take a look at this. If I build this compact inverter station piece a bit above the ground, it costs me exactly 100 euros. Now I will lower the ground below it 2 units and then delete this station piece again. What we get back is 105 euros, which is more than the 100 we spent on it, meaning we made money by building and deleting a track piece. The problem is we also spent 40 euros lowering the ground, so we're still 35 euros down. The most expensive supports in the game are those of Path with 5 euros per unit, but Path doesn't refund support costs, and the highest for rides is just 3,50 euros per unit on rides such as the wooden coaster. This is far less than the 20 euros it costs to lower one tile of land by 1 unit, but luckily we can stack rides. By building multiple track pieces above each other on the same tile, we should be able to turn a profit. If we stack 10 wooden roller coaster pieces, we should make 35 euros from the refund if we lower the tile below it by 1 unit, which, after subtracting the 20 euro land lowering cost, leads to a 15 euro profit. And that's indeed what we see. We just made money by lowering land. I think you know where this is going. If we stack a lot of track pieces above every bit of land before lowering it, we will never run out of money and flatten the entire park without ever having a guest go on a ride. I was taught this trick by viewer Biggie Bows, who discovered it and commented about it on my previous video. I had a vague feeling I had heard of this before, and indeed, a year ago it was also discovered by Traction Slide and refined by Nusse on my Discord server. The funny thing is that Biggie Bows said that this comment was off topic, but little did they know that they just handed me the perfect tool for completely destroying this challenge. We're not quite there yet though, as having to stack a lot of track pieces takes a while to do, and doing that for all 9400 tiles of this park would take forever. My first idea was to build longer stretches of track, which takes only a little bit longer to do than single pieces, yet allows you to do many tiles at once. This was still very slow, but then I suddenly remembered that helixes exist, and you can stack those very quickly indeed. This is now getting us somewhere, but it's still not quick enough for my liking. What we need to do is build the right design and then save that, so that we can build it, lower the ground below it, and then delete it very quickly before building it again somewhere else. It took a little while to refine the design, but eventually I ended up with this. It's a big helix tower with a small helix tower inside of it for maximum efficiency. In fact, this is even more efficient than just normal track pieces next to each other. When you build a track piece in the air, you pay for the support costs of every tile it takes up. A medium turn takes up 7 tiles, so when you raise it 1 unit, you pay the support costs of 7 tiles. The same goes for the small turn, except here it's 4 tiles instead of 7. If we put a 180 degree medium and small turn in this 6x3 area, then we are paying for 22 tiles of support in an area of just 18 tiles, which is a result of the tiles of these turns overlapping a bit. There is also the issue of the support limit. We want to stack as many helixes as possible for maximum profit, but we also want to be able to lower the land a fair bit, otherwise this method is still too slow. In order to fit more track in a smaller coaster, I put one normal 90-degree turn in between every 2 helixes. This does fit, and it makes the helix tower 25% denser vertically. With this design finished, we can now start making money by lowering the land in 6x6 increments, and as we do, we are slowly making more and more money. Some hills are so tall that we can't fully lower the land to 0 meters with this coaster on top, as it hits the support limit, but that's something we'll fix up at the end. This is going relatively quick now, but I think we can still do better. Not right from the start though, as you do need a starting capital to pull this exploit off. Even with a generous 40,000 starting loan, we could only barely afford this design, so something bigger definitely wasn't going to happen. However, just 1 month into the run, we already have over 200,000 euros in the bank, so it's time to switch to a bigger design. It's really just the same design, except it's now 4 of these helix towers that are linked up. I could have saved a significant amount of time by building these in advance, but I feel like excluding the construction time of these custom rides is kind of against the spirit of a challenge run like this, so I'm doing it right here, right now. This coaster is massive, and it costs a nice 169,000 euros to build it on top of one of the hills, and we spent another 42,000 on lowering the land, totaling an investment of 211,000 euros. But we can then delete this ride for a massive 272,000, which is 61,000 euros of pure unadulterated profit. And that's from doing it just once. We're going to make money so fast with this that we're very quickly heading to €1,000,000 in the bank. In early May we hit that million and we no longer need to use this coaster as we have enough money to just flatten the rest of the park, which was looking like an absolute mess with holes everywhere as I tried to pick out the most profitable spots for the support costs exploit. On May 9th I removed the final bit of water and have successfully flattened Alpine Adventures in just 15.5 minutes, over 5 times quicker than the 1 hour 21 of the fastest non-exploit run. This has kind of turned into a speedrun now, as instead of having to wait for guests to go on rides and spend money, it's all about how quickly you can build the ride designs and how fast you can then lower the land with them. This was my 4th attempt and I'm happy with my finishing time of May 9th year 1. You're welcome to try to beat it, but remember that you cannot abuse the pause button, as I didn't do that either. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want me to do another challenge run like this, leave it in the comments below. To learn all about a fun park value exploit, you can click this video right here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.